Have you ever met anybody that you couldn't tell them nothing? I mean, when it came down to you giving them any kind of feedback, they were done with you. Well, you already know that person is difficult to live with. That person is difficult to even hang out with. Don't be that person. And this is how you can move past that by the fuel of feedback. The fuel of feedback. All of us need to hear and to have a hard conversation and receive it. But we're not always open to that. That's what we're going to talk about this morning. Good morning, Gloria. Good morning, Pamela. How are you all on this morning? How do you have that hard conversation? How do you receive that hard conversation? Sometimes it's really, really difficult. That's what we're going to deal with this morning. What a wonderful morning it is. Good morning, Tony. How are you on this morning? Good morning, Angela. How are you all on this morning? Before I jump into things, I want you to write down 3 words. This is what we're going to talk about: reflection, redirect, and render. Those are the 3 words that we're going to talk about this morning. But before I do that, I just kind of want to greet some people this morning. Good morning, Verena. How are you on this morning? Lulu, how are you on this morning? Arlene, how is my home girl doing on this morning? Brenda, Anitra, just glad to see all of you all. Look, I want to talk about the fuel of feedback. How do you have and how do you receive hard conversations? You ever had to deal with, man, I don't want to talk with them. They're not going to receive it. Even though when I share it in love, I know I'm going to get pushback. Or when you know you need to hear some feedback. Good morning, Yvonne. Good morning, Valerie. How are you all on this morning? That's what we want to talk about on this morning. The text, the talk, and the takeaway, 5 minutes or less. Let's jump right into it. Proverbs 15:31. Proverbs 15:31. Whoever heeds life-giving correction will be at home with the wise. Whoever heeds life-giving correction will be at home with the wise. Here we go. The fuel of feedback. The fuel of feedback. 3 words I want you to grab: reflection, redirect, and render. Reflection, redirect, and render. Here's what the proverbial writer is saying. The proverbial writer is saying, look, the person who is able to sit through a hard conversation is the person that is a wise individual. Why? Because, 1, they can have reflection. If there can be no reflection in your life, if you are never able to just sit back and think about, did I do that right? Was that the right thing to say? Was that the right way to act? If you can't have reflection, this is what James says. James 1:24 says, look, who can forget their reflection? Once the word shows you yourself, how can you then leave and forget what you saw? There's no way you can look in the mirror and forget yourself. And that is what happens if you then hear a difficult conversation. I don't know who I'm talking to this morning, but receive this word and then walk away and forget ever having that conversation. It's not easy to receive about yourself. The second thing is this. Then you have to be redirected. You got to be redirected. You know, those of us who are parents, you already know, sometimes you got to redirect your kids. You know what? It's the timeout. It's taking the phone. It's no, you're not going to go out with him, her. And yes, you are going to get in by 10, 11, by 12 at the latest. Yes, there are times when you have to redirect someone. In this story of Balaam and the prophet, who was told to now go prophesy against Israel, the donkey had to redirect him. He says, wait a minute. Don't you see this angel in front of us saying this is not the way to go? And we're going to go in here and prophesy against? No, there's no way. The donkey had enough sense to redirect the prophet. Every now and then, after you get the reflection of the difficult conversation, you then have to get redirected. How are you going to be redirected? The third word is this. You got to render yourself under the mighty hand. Humble yourself. Render yourself. Submit yourself under the mighty hand of God, and he will exalt you. My mother would always say to me, and I'll never forget her words. She said, look, Jeff, if you humble yourself, God will exalt you. Be humble. Humility has to do with you rendering yourself under the control of the mighty hand of God. That's called meekness. When the spirit of the horse, here's the context, when the spirit of the horse is broken, the Greek word calls it meekness. When our spirit is broken by God, by the situations that we find ourselves in, we now render ourselves unto the Lord because he's redirecting us as a result of the reflection that we see in the Word of God. It's going to fuel by the feedback that I get. What's the takeaway this morning? The takeaway is this. You fuel your future when you can receive